Discover 7 life-changing Stoic truths that will transform your mind and spark incredible clarity. Jake woke with the clang of metal hitting metal, the sound echoing in his small garage like a bitter reminder of the weight he carried. Each day felt heavier than the last. His family garage, once humming with laughter and the chatter of loyal customers, stood quiet in the heart of the small Midwestern town. Bills piled high, and the whispers of judgment from the townsfolk felt like dark storm clouds hovering menacingly above him. At just 38, Jake felt his dreams slipping through his fingers like fine sand. He glanced at a family picture on the wall. His wife Lisa, with her radiant smile, held their kids close. They were his anchor, but sometimes their anchor felt like a chain. As he prepared for work, guilt weighed on him. He should be a provider, a protector, yet rising debts gnawed at his spirit. With each passing day, Jake found himself waking earlier, trying to find solace in routine, while the shadow of his younger brother Tim loomed larger. Tim had burst onto the scene, brimming with success from the city, his shiny car and booming business a stark contrast to Jake's humble garage. Each boisterous story of Tim's latest business venture tightened Jake's chest with envy. The flicker of jealousy felt like a wound, and he did his best to suppress it, drowning in resentment. "Just keep working hard," Lisa would say, her voice soothing as they sat at their kitchen table. "We'll get through this." Her unwavering support was a beacon, but even that couldn't quiet the storm inside him. Then came the summer, sultry and unnerving, the ground parched from lack of rain. Just as despair began to settle in like an unwanted guest, ominous storm clouds gathered overhead, a fierce tempest sweeping through the community. Trees snapped like twigs, homes flooded, and people panicked. It was as if nature was taking its toll on everyone, not just Jake. In the chaos, old grievances fled. Among the scattered debris in his neighborhood, Jake's anger with Tim surfaced, uncontrollable as the winds outside. Yet, beneath that fury lay the scar of brotherhood and an undeniable urge for connection. Amid the howling winds, a neighbor's distress cry broke through the tumult, and Jake felt something stir within him. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In that moment, Jake saw his neighbor, eyes wide and desperate, and he realized his internal conflict mirrored the struggles festering in the community. He needed Tim's expertise just as much as he needed his own grit. The darkness that threatened to close in around him suddenly seemed less formidable when faced with the promise of partnership. As they sifted through the wreckage together, Tim approached, hesitation etched on his brow. The path to understanding felt just out of reach, but perhaps it was possible to heal and rebuild, not just their homes but their relationship. Jake stood ready to choose, the weight of his jealousy battling against the desire to embrace unity. The world had not yet decided what was to come, but the future hung just out of reach, drenched in uncertainty and the promise of something more. Jake stood in the midst of swirling chaos, raindrops hammering the ground like an angry drummer. Tim's presence felt both welcoming and threatening. "We can help," Tim finally said, his voice barely audible over the roaring storm. The wind spat around them, but Jake felt warmth in the offer. It was a lifeline stretched out amid panic. "Help me with what?" "My garage. My life." Jake shot back, frustration lacing his words. Anger bubbled inside him like a pot ready to boil over. "You think you can just swoop in and save everything?" Tim stepped forward, his expression earnest. "I'm not here to save you, Jake. I'm here because we're family. We can tackle this together." For a moment, Jake hesitated, allowing the words to penetrate his thick armor of resentment. The idea of collaborating felt foreign, overwhelming even. Yet buried deep inside, a flicker of hope danced hesitantly. Could they truly mend what had been broken? The storm seemed to echo his internal struggle, twisting and turning above them as if nature itself anticipated Jake's decision. In the past, every interaction with Tim had been laced with competition. They had battled for their parents' pride, for each achievement, turning brotherhood into a contest. Yet now, amid the raging tempest, that competition seemed trivial. A neighborhood friend shouted, urging them to act quickly. "Let us at least help the neighbors." Jake shouted over the wind, breaking the thick tension. It felt like a splinter was pulled out of his chest. The urge to assist others, to feel useful in a sea of despair, surged within him. "Yeah. Great idea." Tim's face lit up with a mixture of relief and approval. Together, they moved through the scattered debris, rescuing soaked furniture and lost toys, fetching essentials for those who were now stranded. The storm continued to rage around them, but in that moment, working side by side began washing away the bitterness that had clouded their bond. With each act of kindness, a shift occurred inside Jake. The jealous grip that had constricted him began to loosen. He watched Tim, not as the successful golden boy but as a brother standing shoulder to shoulder with him in a chaotic world. They exchanged stories, laughter mingled with the sound of rain, and in the simplest moments, healing started to unfold. "Do you remember when we used to play in the backyard?" Tim remarked, a glimmer of nostalgia in his voice. "The mud pies, angry bees?" It was a thin line of connection, a bridge over their shared history. Jake chuckled, remembering. "Yeah. I think I might have eaten one of those mud pies." They shared a laugh that felt real, unexpected, and warm against the storm's chill. Just as the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the wreckage with soft golden light, Jake felt a shift within himself too. The storm outside was an inner storm as well, and perhaps it was finally beginning to calm. But just as the moment of peace washed over him, a distant shout cut through the air, trembling with urgency. Another neighbor, frantic and pointing at a neighboring house. "The roof's collapsing. We need help." Jake's heart raced. The specter of despair hung heavy, thickening the air around him again. He glanced at Tim, seeking a partner, a friend. They locked eyes, and in that moment, silence carried more weight than 1,000 words. Would they leap into the fray together once more, confronting not only the frailty of their town but the complexities of their own bond? The question settled in Jake's gut as they rushed toward the screaming voice of impending danger, their old wounds simmering beneath the surface, waiting for a chance to heal or break wide open again. Jake broke into a run, his feet splashing through puddles as adrenaline surged through his veins. The house across the street leaned precariously, its roof sagging like a weary giant. He could hear the cries for help, panic etched in every voice. Together, he and Tim sprinted toward the danger, a sense of purpose igniting their movements. "We need boards, tarps, anything to stabilize it," Jake shouted, signaling for Tim to follow him. He felt his heart pounding hard, driven by a mix of fear and determination. This was a chance. A chance not only to help others but to redefine what it meant to be brothers. Tim nodded, his expression fierce and focused. "I'll grab some wood from my place." He yelled and took off in another direction, leaving Jake to survey the chaos. The porch of the house creaked ominously, the weight of the rain pulling in dangerous spots. He could see a family huddled inside, their faces pale with fear. "Hang in there. We're coming," Jake called out. The cries grew louder, fueled by desperation, causing a tight knot to form in his stomach. The storm had transformed their quiet neighborhood into a battleground, and Jake knew that time was running out. He dashed across the street to a nearby shed, flinging open the door. Inside, he found old planks of wood and unrolled tarps, remnants of long-forgotten projects. He grabbed as much as he could carry and sprinted back toward the collapsing house, Tim right behind him, arms full. "Let us do this," Tim exclaimed, dropping his load. They worked quickly, fastening the tarps over the roof, their hands fumbling but efficient. The rain poured relentlessly, drenching them as they struggled against the weight of the world above. The fear in the family as ice pushed them on. "You got this," Jake shouted, rallying not just the family inside but also himself. As they secured the materials, they laughed nervously over their shared struggle. "It's just like that time we built the treehouse, right? Just more urgent." Tim grinned, sweat mixing with rain. "And less fun." But the bond they were forming, working side by side, was beginning to overshadow the years of rivalry and anger. For the first time in a long while, Jake felt like he wasn't competing against him. They were fighting alongside each other for something bigger. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed above them. Jake's stomach dropped. "Get down!" he yelled, and they dove to the side just as a large piece of debris fell, crashing where they had stood moments before. The family gasped, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still, the air thick with tension and fear. Heart racing, Jake pushed himself back up. "We need to finish this." Tim nodded, his eyes fierce with resolve. Together they scrambled back to the roof, dodging raindrops and panels that threatened to break loose. They worked faster, digging deep into the reserves of adrenaline that fueled their bodies. As they reinforced the tarp and secured the last of the wood, a thankful voice cried out from inside the house. "You did it. You're heroes." Jake felt warmth spread through him, greater than any competition he had ever felt with Tim. In his chest, the old wounds began to heal slowly, replaced by a fierce sense of hope. "We're not done yet," Jake shouted, realizing that this moment was only the beginning. When they finally stepped back, exhaustion washed over them like the rain. The house stood safe for now. But as they caught each other's eyes, there was more than relief. There was a promise of family, of loyalty, and of the bravery it took to mend what was once broken. Yet before they could catch their breath, another chilling scream came from down the street. "Help! The creek is rising." Jake's heart sank. They had saved one house, but now another emergency loomed, and the storm was showing no signs of easing. Would they find the same strength to face this new challenge together, or would the storm tear them apart once again? Jake and Tim exchanged a quick glance, the urgency of the moment pulling them back into action. With no time to lose, Jake nodded towards where the screams had come from. "We need to go. Now." They sprinted down the street, rain pelting down like a million tiny fists. The sound of rushing water grew louder with each step, a menacing roar that sent shivers through Jake's spine. Ahead, he could see a crowd of neighbors gathered at the creek's edge, their faces twisted in fear as they watched the water rise, creeping dangerously close to their homes. "What is happening?" Tim shouted as they reached the gathering. "The creek is overflowing," a woman cried, her voice shaking. "We need to do something. It's going to flood." Jake's mind raced. He had to think. It wasn't just them anymore, there was a whole community counting on him and Tim. "We need sandbags. We can build a barrier," he yelled, trying to rally the people around them. "I'll help you," said an older man from the crowd, stepping forward. "I've got a truck, I can get more supplies." "Let us go," Jake directed, keeping his heart steady. "Tim, stay here and help organize everyone." Without waiting for a response, Jake took off toward the nearby hardware store, praying desperately that it wasn't too flooded to use. Every step felt like a leap as he dodged puddles and debris, the rain stinging his face. He reached the store, breathless, and banged on the door. After a few moments of hesitation, it swung open, revealing the owner standing inside, fear etched on his face. "I can't, please. We need sandbags. The creek is overflowing, and if we don't stop it, houses will be underwater." Jake's voice held the weight of desperation. The owner hesitated, but Jake met his gaze. "You can save your community. Help us." With a heavy sigh, the owner nodded and started grabbing sandbags, loading them onto a cart. Jake rushed out to help, adrenaline pushing him forward. They worked quickly, and soon he was sprinting back towards the creek with the heavy bags, the sound of rushing water now echoing in his ears. When he returned, Tim was directing a group of neighbors as they formed a line to stack the sandbags. The water was now mere feet away from the edge of the path, threatening to swallow everything in its path. "Jake! Over here!" Tim called, waving him over. Together, they started passing bags down the line, urgency fueling their teamwork. The tension in the air was thick, but the knowledge that they were working together, side by side, sparked a renewed sense of hope in Jake. They stacked the bags high, forming a barrier against the relentless onslaught of the water. Neighbors joined in, hands working frantically, sharing glances of encouragement and fear. The sense of community grew stronger, reminding Jake of the roots they all shared in this neighborhood, the memories that intertwined their lives. Just as they finished the last bag, a loud crash broke the air. Part of a nearby tree came tumbling down, swept away by the rising creek. Gasps echoed through the crowd, the reality of the storm hitting hard. "Everyone stay back!" Jake shouted, instinctively stepping forward. He had to protect these people, even as fear threatened to grip his heart once again. Then, just as they caught their breath, the crack of thunder reverberated, and a warning shout rang out. "Look out! It's coming!" In that moment, as the tide rushed closer, Jake's heart raced. Together, they had created a wall, but would it be enough? Would the strength found in brotherhood hold as the storm bore down on them? He felt the fear grip him again. The storm wasn't showing any signs of letting up. It was a matter of time before the true test of their courage began. Would they stand together, or would the rushing flood take them down? As the words echoed around him, Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The floodwaters were relentless, inching closer with each heartbeat. He turned to the crowd, their faces painted in a grim mix of determination and fear. The sound of the rushing creek roared louder, drowning out the distant thunder, threatening to wash away their hopes along with their homes. "Stay alert. We need to remain focused," Jake called out. His voice strained but firm, he could feel the weight of their eyes on him. They were all counting on his leadership now. Tim, glancing at Jake, wiped the rain from his brow. "What's the plan, Jake?" "We need to fortify this barrier." Taking a moment, Jake scanned the area. The water was still rising, and the sandbags were holding, but the trees above swayed precariously. "We can't just stand here," he shouted. "We need to reinforce the barricade. If the current gets any stronger, it will break through." Nearby, an older woman named Mrs. Henderson, her eyes wide with fear, approached him. "Jake, my grandchildren are in the house. What if the flood comes? We can't let this happen." His chest tightened at the thought. "Together, we can protect the neighborhood," he replied, trying to muster courage. "Get everyone to grab whatever they can, boards, furniture, anything heavy. We might need to create more barriers further back." Before anyone could respond, a rumble of thunder echoed ominously overhead, causing people to jump. The crowd began to scatter, but Jake held his ground. Don't panic. Work together. We'll get through this. Tim nodded. I'll start gathering the boards. He darted off, rallying a small group to follow him. The rain fell harder, blurring the world around them into a haze of grey. Mud slid beneath Jake's feet, and he struggled to maintain his composure as he thought about families trapped inside their homes. Every heartbeat reminded him of the urgency. He directed people, each moment stretching time thin, pushing against the rising tide of chaos. The line of sandbags was holding, but what if it wasn't enough? Every second that passed felt like an eternity. The children's laughter suddenly rang through the darkness, cutting through the tension as some brave souls made their way to the creek, cautious yet curious. Mom! Look at the water. They pointed and gasped at the spectacle, oblivious to the danger. Panic shot through Jake. Get back! He shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Before he could act, a fierce wave surged, water spilling over the edge. The barricade they had built began to buckle under the pressure. Gasps filled the crowd as everyone stepped back, fear morphing the laughter into cries of alarm. Jake rushed to the wall, digging his heels into the ground. We can't let it break. Hold this line. He threw himself over the sandbags, trying to steady the shifting load. The people around him joined in, forming a human chain to hold the barrier together. Look! Tim shouted from a distance, pointing toward the tree line. A shadow loomed, dark and menacing. It's falling. Jake's heart dropped. He turned to see a tree, uprooted by the flood, careening toward them. The anger of the storm unleashed a new chaos. Everyone, move back! He yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. As the massive tree tumbled toward the stunned crowd, he knew they had limited time. Would they scatter in time, or would they be caught under the weight of helplessness? The stakes had risen. This was their moment of truth, but Jake had to hold on to the hope that their unity could withstand even the fiercest storm. With a determined breath, he prepared to act, but a wave of panic surged, and the real question lingered in the air: would they stand firm together, or would the flood tear them apart? Jake's instincts kicked in, the world around him narrowing as he focused on the coming disaster. The tree, a massive, uncontrollable force, was nothing but a shadow now, racing toward them. Every heartbeat thundered in his ears. Move back! Everyone, now! He shouted, urgency spilling from him as he lunged back toward the crowd. He caught a glimpse of Mrs. Henderson, frozen in place, fear gripping her features as she gazed towards her grandchildren still played near the creek. Get them away! He implored, his voice a desperate plea. Tim, already sprinting, grabbed the nearest child, pulling them away from the banks as the tree flew closer, a deadly spectre. But even as he moved, Jake knew others struggled to grasp the gravity of their situation. The laughter of innocence became a distant echo as fear took a new hold. The tree crashed into the barricade with a sickening thud, splintering the sandbags and sending shards of wood flying like shrapnel through the air. Hold on! Jake yelled, lunging toward the barrier, sensing the ground quake beneath him. A wave of water surged forward, rushing past the remnants of their feeble shields. The chaos erupted around them. People screamed, but Jake didn't falter. He grabbed Tim's arm, pulling him towards the remnants of the barricade. We need to reinforce our line. Grab anything. Together, they rushed to the nearby homes, yanking up furniture, metal scraps, and anything that could serve as a bulwark against the obsession of the storm. With every piece they added, Jake felt the chains of fear tighten and then slacken. There was a rhythm to their frantic teamwork, a shared understanding that cemented their bond. As they worked frantically against the rising tide, Jake's gaze locked onto Mrs. Henderson, who clutched her grandchildren tightly to her, whispering reassurances. From across the chaotic scene, she caught his eye and nodded, a flicker of determination lighting her features. In that moment, Jake realized they were not alone. They were a community, all fighting for each other, and the thought fueled him. But even as they fortified the remnants of their flailing defenses, another loud crack echoed through the storm-laden sky. He turned, his heart sinking. A second tree was falling. "Jake! Behind you!" Tim screamed as he struggled under the weight of a heavy beam. Jake pivoted to see the massive trunk splinter and crash into their makeshift barrier. From one tree's aftermath, a new wave of chaos erupted. The barricade shuddered violently, water gushing through the cracks and directly towards them. "Keep pushing!" Jake shouted, his voice barely rising above the roar of the water. "Get everyone back. We have to retreat." But even Jake's demands were drowned by panic, as the crowd began to unravel, fear taking hold. The disbelief seeped in, but so did resilience, as mothers grabbed their children, and fathers pulled loved ones along. The storm was claiming the night, but amid the chaos, Jake held onto the flicker of hope burning in their unity. Just as he felt a surge of despair threatening to overtake him, he met Tim's frantic eyes, full of purpose. Their eyes locked, transmitting a silent vow. They would not give up. Not today, but as the water surged higher, swallowing the ground beneath their feet, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. What lay ahead? Would they truly escape being engulfed by the flood? With every movement and heartbeat counted, Jake's eyes widened at the sight of something darker. Another wave, bigger than before, forming in the distance. Hope felt like a fleeting dream, leaving one overwhelming question: would they endure, or would the flood wash away all they fought for? The wave surged forth, a monstrous wall of water, threatening to consume everything in its path. Jake felt his heart race, every instinct screaming for him to act. "Tim, we've got to get everyone back to the hill," he shouted, desperate for a plan. The hill loomed in the distance, a false beacon of safety against nature's wrath, but it was their only chance. He turned to Mrs. Henderson, who was still holding her grandchildren protectively. "Mrs. Henderson. We need to move, now." She hesitated, her grip tightening on the kids. Jake rushed over, glancing at the rising water lapping at their ankles. "Please. It's not safe here." With a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay, let us go." She scooped up the youngest while the older one clung to her side. Together, they turned, anxiously retracing their steps through the chaos. The crowd splintered in every direction, desperate cries melding into a distant roar as fear tipped into panic. Jake glanced back, seeing that same look of terror reflected in Tim's face. "We're going to need every single person to make this work." Every second stretched unbearably as the water rushed higher. The ground squished beneath their feet, mud pulling at their shoes as they fought against the currents that threatened to drag them down. "Form a line," Jake urged, trying to rally the confused group. "Grab onto each other. We need to stick together." Hands reached out, clutching onto whatever they could. It was chaos, but the instinct to survive pulled them closer. They began inching backward, retreating toward the hill, a collective force forged from fear and determination. "Jake, what if?" Tim gasped, his face pale. "Don't think." Jake shot back, urgency fueling his words. "Just move." But thoughts of what if danced through Jake's mind too. What if they didn't make it? He could feel the ground shifting, the water rising. Just then, a shriek pierced the air, cutting through the panic like a knife. A parent had lost grip of their child. Jake turned instinctively, scanning the fray to find a little boy struggling against the current, screaming as he was pulled toward the creek. Without a second thought, Jake plunged into the swirling water, the cold shocking his system. It surged around him, pulling at his legs like a malevolent force. His muscles screamed as he fought against the current, each stroke pushing him closer to the boy. "Hold on. I'm coming," Jake yelled, even as the boy's tiny form drifted further away. The distance felt endless, but he couldn't let fear consume him. He reached out, fingers grazing the boy's arm. With a strong pull, he snatched the child back against him. "I've got you." He turns, half carrying, half dragging the boy back through the muddy water. Relief washed over him as they reached the edge of the crowd. He gasped, stumbling onto solid ground, the main group now huddled, eyes wide and frantic. "Jake! You did it!" Tim's voice rang with incredulity, but there was no time to celebrate. The wave behind them crested, an impending doom ready to unleash itself. "Up the hill! Everyone! Move!" Jake shouted again, his voice full of urgency. He couldn't stop to think, couldn't feel the weight of his actions. Hope hung by a thread, and he vowed to hold on. As they started up the hill, the water surged again, a roar that sent tremors through the ground. Jake looked back just in time to see the treetops disappear beneath the force of the wave. Would they make it to the top? Would they somehow find safety? As he pushed through, adrenaline surged within, but somewhere deep inside, a crack of doubt quivered. In the face of nature's fury, would courage be enough this time? The ground trembled beneath Jake's feet as they staggered up the hill, pulse quickening with every step. He could hear the chaos behind him, the desperate yells, the water crashing like a thunderous drummer, drumming up a storm. Panic clawed at him, but he pressed on, fueled by the small body clutch in his arms. "Keep moving," he cried out, urging those around him. The group wavered, fear written on their faces, but they were starting to find their footing. They were not just individuals anymore, they were a unit, bound together by survival's instinct. The hill was their lifeline, their promise of safety. Finally, the ascent began to level, creating a brief moment for breath. Jake dropped to his knees, still holding the boy, who was now catching his breath. The child's wide eyes reflected terror, but there was also something else, a flicker of hope, as if he understood that struggle often preceded salvation. "Thank you," the boy whispered, a mix of relief and awe flickering across his features. "Just stay with us," Jake replied, forcing a smile through the heavy weight of anxiety pressing against his chest. Around him, he could see others sharing moments of connection, mothers finding their children, friends reuniting, and a glimmer of shared resilience filling the air. "Tim." Jake turned to his friend, who was helping Mrs. Henderson stabilize her grandchildren. "Is everyone here?" Tim nodded, drawing in a trembling breath. "I think so, but what do we do now?" The question hung in the air, palpable, heavy with uncertainty. Jake scanned the horizon beyond the impending wave, gauging the landscape. The sky darkened further, clouds swirling ominously, nature's own heartbeat echoing in the environment. "We wait," he decided. "For now, we hold our ground. We stay together." But it wasn't just a static wait. He could feel the urgency within him starting to boil over. The waves were relentless, and the longer they lingered, the more precarious their situation became. "Someone should scout the area," Jake said, looking at Tim. "I'll go," Tim offered, a brave front masking his own apprehension. He began moving cautiously toward the edge of the hill, peering over the side nervously. "No," Jake said, stopping him. "It's too dangerous. You don't know what's down there." Their gazes locked for a moment, and Jake saw the fear mirrored in Tim's eyes. They were both grappling with the same reality. The world they once knew was gone, washed away by the force of the wave. They were standing at the precipice of an unknown future, but they had to keep hope alive. In that instant, the roar of the water seemed to recede, and Jake let the moment linger. He clutched the boy tightly, feeling the warmth of his small body against the chill in the air. "We're going to be okay," Jake promised, even if he wasn't sure how he could uphold such a pledge. Then, from below, as he turned his head to scan the horizon one last time, something strange caught his eye. There, hidden amidst the debris of the flooding storm, a flash of color shimmered. It was unmistakable, a red light, pulsing rhythmically, like a beacon piercing through the chaos. Team Jake's heartbeat drummed in his ears. "Look down there." Tim turned his gaze to the flickering light, curiosity lighting up his features. "What is that?" "I think it might be a signal," Jake breathed, suddenly overwhelmed by a spark of renewed hope. But what if it wasn't just a signal? What if it meant something more? As the waves continued to crash against the hill, adrenaline surged through him once more. "We need to find out. Would this flicker of hope lead to their salvation, or would it be another obstacle in this unforgiving storm?" "Jake, wait!" Tim called, urgency creeping into his voice. But the fire in Jake's heart pushed him forward. He could feel the boy's breath hitch against him, a reminder of what was at stake. They couldn't just sit still, hoping for rescue while the world crumbled around them. The red light pulsed, beckoning like a lighthouse through fog. Jake turned to the group, his eyes sweeping across their anxious faces. "We're going to check it out," he decided. "We might find help down there." Several heads nodded, but others looked hesitant. Fear was a living thing, swirling in the air as thick as the impending storm. Mrs. Henderson clutched her grandchildren, her eyes wide. "What if it's dangerous?" she asked, voice quaking. Jake met her gaze, searching for words. "It might be. But staying here could be worse. We need to try." For a moment, the group stood in tense silence, the sound of the crashing waves serving as a chilling backdrop. The small boy in Jake's arms squirmed slightly, eyes still fixated on him. Jake held him tighter, feeling that flicker of hope transform into a flame. "Okay," Tim said, resolve settling in his voice. "Let us go together. We won't split up." Jake nodded, grateful for his friend's support. He turned back to the cliff's edge, ready to descend. As they made their way down, each step was accompanied by a chorus of whispers and cautious breaths. The air turned thick with anticipation. When they reached the bottom, what lay before them was a chaotic mix of debris. Trees, chunks of homes, and remnants of lives once peaceful scattered like toys after a storm. But there, in the center, the red light flickered fiercely, almost defiantly. "What is that?" Tim wondered aloud, stepping forward hesitantly. Jake approached, heart pounding. The pulse of the light cast shadows on his face. He could see now that it emitted from a small device, half buried in the mud but still operational. A radio. He knelt down, digging it out with trembling fingers. The weight of hope was almost unbearable. They might be able to reach someone, find help. "Let me see," Tim said, looking over Jake's shoulder. "Can you turn it on?" Jake fumbled with the knobs, heart racing as his fingers found the switch. Please work. A crackle, and then static filled the air. Hope clouded by uncertainty weighed on him. He tried again, taking a deep breath, forcing the panic down. "Is there anyone out there?" He called into the void. But the response was silence. The brief moment of excitement faded, replaced by an aching disappointment. "What if it doesn't work?" Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. Tim's hand rested on his shoulder. "We can try again. Someone has to hear us." Just then, a shadow fell across the remnants of the radio. A figure loomed, emerging from the chaos. Jake's body tensed, ready to run, to shield the boy at all costs. But as the figure grew closer, the features sharpened. It was a man, dirt-streaked but alive, and his eyes were wide with fear. "Did you find it?" the man shouted, breathless. Jake held the radio aloft like a torch. "We're trying to contact someone. Do you know where this leads? Is anyone else alive?" The man shook his head, retreating a little as if the weight of the situation crushed him. "No one is around, but we can try. Follow me." Jake exchanged glances with Tim, the flickering flame of hope reignited. "Let us go," he said, urgency propelling them forward. As they began to follow the man, the looming shadows of fear still trailed alongside. But now they also carried a burgeoning sense of purpose. Jake felt it inside him, a surge that perhaps they weren't as lost as they thought. "Wait," the boy whispered suddenly, tugging at Jake's shirt. "What if we can't find them?" Jake turned to the child, kneeling down to meet his eyes. "Then we keep searching. Together." The boy nodded, though doubt still clouded his gaze. Jake wondered, though, if they were truly ready for what lay ahead. And then, somewhere deep in the distance, a growl echoed, a sound that wasn't just thunder, but something more primal, more menacing. Fear gripped Jake's heart once more. "What was that?" Tim shouted, eyes flicking toward the sound. Jake's stomach twisted. He already knew they had to face something worse than the storm. They had to embrace the unknown, whatever it would bring. As they hurried after the man into the unforgiving landscape, a chilling realization settled over them: the fight for survival was just beginning. What awaited them on the other side of that growl? Would they uncover life or further danger? In the aftermath of the storm, the world felt eerily still. Jake stood at the foot of the hill, his heart racing against the quiet, whispering winds. Tim was beside him, their earlier chaos replaced by a shared determination. The boy, grasping Jake's hand, was a reminder of what truly mattered: hope, family, and the fight against despair. "What now?" Tim asked, his brow furrowed as he scanned the landscape. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their choices pressing down on him. "We find help," he replied, his voice steady. "Follow that man and stay close." The group moved cautiously, navigating the debris-littered terrain. Each step forward wove them into a fragile tapestry of camaraderie. Together, they held each other up, and gradually, fears began to fade. The man who led them, a fellow survivor named Marcus, shared his story as they walked. He'd seen the destruction unfold, running for safety as the floodwaters consumed everything he knew. His voice trembled, but there was resilience that ignited something deep within Jake. "People gather at the old community center," Marcus said. "If we can reach there, we might find friends or even first responders." "Then let us hustle," Tim said, glancing at Jake, their unspoken agreement solidified by a shared glance. They pressed on, determination igniting their steps. The landscape, once familiar, now twisted into an alien cacophony of broken homes and scattered lives. But amid the wreckage, they spotted others like them, families banding together, searching for comfort in unity. A flicker of hope stretched across Jake's heart. "Look!" He pointed to a small group clustered nearby, their faces weary yet hopeful. "We're not as alone as we thought." As they approached, a woman with tear-stained cheeks looked up. "Is that a rescue radio?" she asked, pointing at the device still clutched in Jake's other hand. His heart swelled at her hope. "We're trying to contact anyone who can help. Come with us to the community center. We can't let fear win." With newfound urgency, Jake led the band of survivors toward the center, his pulse steadying with each shared story. People around him were recounting the storm as destruction, exposing wounds, and healing them with connection. Within the towering structure creaking under the weight of uncertainty, they could hear fevered voices, people working together to forge hope from despair. There was something remarkable about the spirit that lingered there. Jake hustled into the room, feeling the warmth of solidarity washed over him like a comforting embrace. "Everyone!" he shouted, urgency flowing through him. "We need to regroup. Anyone still able to move, let us reach out." Grabbing Tim's arm, he raced toward a window, scanning the flooded landscape. "We can send signals, make noise. Rally everyone." With a ragged piece of cloth, they crafted a makeshift flag. The vibrant color rippled through the air, an echo of camaraderie that gleamed against the slate-gray skies. "Over here!" Jake yelled, using every ounce of breath to gain the attention of onlookers outside. "Let us draw them towards us." As they waved, a ripple of excitement coursed through the group. Then it happened. A distant hum broke through the heavy atmosphere, growing louder until it became undeniable. The thudding of rotor blades sliced through the dying whispers of the storm. "Look!" Tim shouted, pointing toward the horizon as a helicopter emerged from the mist. The sight sent waves of exhilaration crashing over Jake, and he felt tears prick his eyes as he grasped the reality. They had made it, with every hand raised in salute, every heart beating in rhythm with hope. The sound of the helicopter brought a catharsis that washed over them like the warmest sun after a frigid winter. In that moment, Jake realized they had not just faced the storm. They had stood together against it, emerging stronger. The scars of old rivalries and grief faded under the warmth of newfound purpose and unity. Family, friends, and community forged anew. "Jake, we did it." Tim's voice broke through his thoughts, and they exchanged a knowing look, that old spark of siblinghood igniting again. As the helicopter hovered above, promising rescue, Jake tightened the grip around the boy's hand, feeling that flicker of hope burning brightly in their hearts. They had survived a storm, both outside and within. Together, Jake whispered to himself, feeling the truth crystallize in his spirit. And in that moment, he knew they would continue to face whatever storms lay ahead. Together, this is your chance. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that will move your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for the journey these characters took. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. I want to hear from you, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel.